At L&M Fine Jewelry, we hand select our diamonds to give you the very best prices possible. Monty knows a great deal when he finds one. Find your great deal at L&M Fine Jewelry.
Your diamond destination.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Samuel Akem here, and I am back with another one. I tried to fix the sound this week. I'm testing out this new mic. As I told you guys, I need to get a set of headphones still to test. Either way, we're not going to get into that. I appreciate you guys for tapping in. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button right now. Make sure you guys hit that like button right now. Make sure you guys tell a friend about me. Send this video out to anybody you know. I appreciate you guys for tapping in. It was a great week in Big Sky football this weekend. It was a great week in FCS football this weekend. I think as we edge nearer and nearer towards the playoffs, the conversation sort of shifts. Not so much shifts away from just Big Sky football, but we have to talk about the grand scheme of FCS football because that's ultimately going to play a part in everything. So I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you guys checking into the channel. First things first. If you are a Grizz fan, if you live in Missoula, Under the Helmet, every Sunday, 5 to 7 p.m. at the press box. Come check us out. Sitting down with the Grizz running backs, interviewing a new Grizz running back every single week. The audio will drop on Skyline Sports every week, and the video will also be posted up on my channel on Thursdays. So you guys can check that out. It's been a great week of football. We are going to be recapping all of it. We're going to be talking about playoffs. We're going to be talking about the recent reveal that the FCS just dropped. I think they're going to drop another one Tuesday right after this video drops, but I think there shouldn't be too much movement in the top 10, so I feel safe about recording this on Sunday, dropping it on Tuesday, and giving you guys my thoughts on what that recent reveal was. And then, we're going to talk about the FCS, what's going on around the FCS, where teams are currently standing, who could make a push for the playoffs, who is out of the playoffs, what things are looking like. It's looking like there could be some ties in some of these big conferences, so we're going to talk about that as it pertains to the Big Sky Conference. And then I got my top players, I got my Big Sky poll, all of that stuff. So thank you guys for tapping in. Make sure you guys leave me a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and we will get straight into it. Okay, everybody. First things first, we are talking about Montana versus Cal Poly. Montana took on Cal Poly this weekend. It was an amazing game. Not really an amazing. I mean, it was a good game. Montana was allowing Cal Poly to hang around for a little bit. It was a 14-0 game for most of the game. I did a breakdown on the game, so you guys can go check that out. That should have dropped yesterday. I'm also doing a Montana State versus Eastern Washington. That was a better game than the Montana-Cal Poly game. You guys can go check that out as well. But Montana and Cal Poly got into a dogfight a little bit early on in the game. 14-0 game for most of the game. Cal Poly was hanging around. I think it was more so Montana's doing that Cal Poly was hanging around than it was Cal Poly's doing. Cal Poly really wasn't able to get anything going offensively for most of that game. They turned the ball over 3 times. They had a fumble in the first half, 2 interceptions in the second half. Junior Bergen had a record 6th punt return touchdown. That's now a Big Sky record. Also a Montana record. I don't know what the national record is. We'd have to look that up. But he's in the record books in the Big Sky. He's in the record books in Montana's record books. So 7 total return touchdowns. One of those being a kickoff return. The rest of those being punt returns. Obviously, he didn't get the return for much of the beginning of his career because we had also a record holder in Malik. Malik Flowers was the returner prior to Junior being the kickoff returner. And obviously Malik was a great returner. Coach Houck knows how to scheme those guys open. So a little hand in hand there. But Junior Bergen, man, record-breaking return. He was really the spark late in the third quarter. There's 3 minutes left in the third quarter. He takes that punt back. Then next drive, Montana gets an interception. I think it was, sometime early in the fourth quarter, Montana gets an interception. They score, making it 28-0. Then sometime, I think that exact next drive, Cal Poly throws another interception to Kershawn Gordon. Montana scores shortly after that to make it 35-0. And then to end it all off, late in the fourth quarter with about 3 to 4 minutes to go in the game, maybe a little less than that, Stevie Rocker scores his touchdown after a long shuttle pass reception down to the 1-yard line. He scores, gets into the end zone, and that makes it 42-7. In between that Stevie Rocker touchdown and the Logan Fife, well, actually it was, let me get the name right, Lucas Freitas touchdown, because Logan Fife really ran it in, but it got punched out. Lucas Freitas recovered it, which ended up being a touchdown for him. In between there, Cal Poly got a touchdown. Now, the Montana defense has been playing much better. Defensively, they gave up 13 against Northern Arizona. They gave up none against Northern Colorado. Northern Arizona is a good team. Northern Arizona could actually make the playoffs. They beat up on Weber State yesterday. Ty Pennington played a really good game. We'll get into that a little later. But, what was I saying? Oh, defensively, they've been playing really good. They've given up 20 points defensively because, remember, Montana had that sack fumble that ended up being a touchdown. For Northern Arizona. Outside of that, they gave up 13 points against Northern Arizona. They gave up none against Northern Colorado, and they gave up 7 against Cal Poly. So 20 points in the last 3 games. If you average that out, that's probably around. Let's do the math right now. Actually, let me just take all the weighting gain. I'm at it. 20 divided by 3. They've given up 6.5, just a little over 6.5 points in the last 3 games defensively, which is really, really good. Now, if you look at the rest of what they've done throughout the season, it doesn't look good. But these last 3 weeks, Northern Arizona being the really one that I want to point to, Northern Colorado is not that good. Cal Poly is not great. They've done good. So 31 points against Northern Colorado or Northern Arizona. They did 24 points last week, plus 42 to yesterday. That is an average of 32 points a game in their last 3 games. So a pretty close to like a 25-point win margin in these last 3 games if you average it out. And they've been playing good football. Montana's been playing good football. They've been playing clean. They've been doing what they've needed to do. That Weber State loss does not look good. As the weeks go on, that Weber State loss looks worse and worse and worse, especially considering it was at home. That game looks so bad for for Montana. Also, you look at the North Dakota game. That game looks worse and worse and worse. North Dakota has now lost back-to-back games. I'm going to go find them real quick. Montana lost to North Dakota on the road, 27-24, second game of the season. That is a game that they had a 24-7 lead at going into halftime. They didn't put up a point in the second half. They had, I think, 17 plays in the second half. Abysmal game for Montana. They did not play good. But North Dakota, if you look at what they've done the last few weeks, they lost on the road to Youngstown State, 41-40. That was an overtime final. They went for 2, I believe, and did not get it and lost the game. They lost to Indiana State. Both have a losing record. They played Northern Iowa. They beat them. They lost to North Dakota State badly, 41-17. They beat up on Murray State, 72-35. They beat San Diego, 41-28. They beat Idaho State, 52-28. But if you look at some of these wins that North Dakota has had, now that and this is why early on in the season I was saying it's so hard to judge these teams because we don't have a good sample size. We have a healthy sample size of who these teams are now. And if you look at this North Dakota schedule, it looks really favorable. That Montana game is the only game you can point to that's a good win for North Dakota. Outside of that, they beat Idaho State. They beat San Diego, who's middle to bottom of the Pioneer League. They lost to North Dakota State. They beat Murray State, who sucks and is in the Missouri Valley. No offense to them. They beat Northern Iowa, who's not good. They lost to Youngstown State, who was highly ranked to start the season, but has a losing record now. They're under 500. And then they lost to Indiana State, who's never really been good in the Missouri Valley and has been under 500. So now they are 5-4, about to take on. They are 5-4, about to take on South Dakota State, 7-2 South Dakota State. And could they make it interesting? They're playing in the Alaris Center. They could potentially beat South Dakota State, but I don't really foresee that happening. North Dakota, that game doesn't look good for Montana. What does look good for Montana? They beat Western Carolina, who is ranked. So we're going to go find Western Carolina's schedule. We're going to go find Western Carolina. They are ranked. They're one of the better teams in that SoCon conference. We'll actually find what the standings in that SoCon conference are right now. Western Carolina is currently second in the SoCon, 4-1. Western Carolina in conference play, second to Mercer, who's 5-1. Western Carolina is 5-4 overall, but I know their non-conference schedule really beat them up. They lost to NC State. They lost a bad one to Campbell. They beat Elon. They lost to Montana. And then they lost to, who did they lose to? They lost to Mercer. So they lost to Mercer, which was a bad loss. That means they're probably going to end up being second in the SoCon. But that is not a bad loss for Montana, say. It's not a great win for them. They're 5-4, so it doesn't look super great. But if Western Carolina is able to win out and finish at, 8-4, that could end up being a decent win for Montana. But as it stands right now, the 2 really good wins for Montana are that Missouri State win. Missouri State is looking really good. One more time, we're going to go look at Missouri State's schedule. They've been having a pretty good season. They lost to Ball State, and they also lost to Montana at home. the more the weeks go on, Missouri State is 7-2. They beat Southern Illinois yesterday, 38-17. They beat Northern Iowa 49-42. They beat Indiana State 46-21. They beat Illinois State, who I think was ranked at the time that they played them, 41-7. They beat Youngstown State 38-31. They beat UT Martin 31-24. I think UT Martin actually just beat Tennessee State yesterday. They're looking pretty good in that Big South OVC conference. The standings of that Big South OVC conference currently are Southeast Missouri State are 5-0, and UT Martin is 4-1, 6-3 overall. So that's a pretty good win for Missouri State against that UT Martin squad. And then they beat Lindenwood. They lost to Ball State 34-42. But if you watch that game, you know that Missouri State-Ball State game was pretty close. And then they lost to Montana at home to start the season. Missouri State is obviously transitioning to the FBS. But it kind of sucks that they're having a good year, the year that they're trying to transition, because a lot of people were mentioning, like, why are they transitioning when they've never really been good in the Big Sky in the Missouri Valley anyway? Now they're going to transition. Either way, that's probably a good win for Missouri State. I don't know if they're ranked because they're transitioning. I know they can't play in the playoffs, so it doesn't really make sense to rank them. But they're a good team. I think they honestly could still. I heard that they could potentially still win that Missouri Valley. That could make things interesting in Missouri Valley. They could shake some things up. I know they. Let me go back to that Missouri State schedule because they have an interesting schedule to end the season, and that could potentially make things interesting in that Missouri Valley if they're able to shake things up. They play North Dakota State. They play Missouri State this week, but they play North Dakota State and South Dakota State to finish the season. So if they're able to beat North Dakota State, who knows? That could be interesting. We will see. I don't know, but Montana State, Montana State. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Montana. I'm gonna talk about Montana State next. That's probably why I keep mentioning them. And I just did a breakdown on Montana State as well, so that might be, who knows, that might be the reason. But Montana is 7-2. They are playing a big time matchup against UC Davis this weekend at 8:15 on ESPN2 under the lights in Washington Grizzly Stadium. I will be there on site. We got the pregame, postgame show on the radio. We'll also be on the stage for the GSA tailgate show. Please come check us out. But that game is going to have massive ramifications. This is a really big test for Montana, who's been up and down. Montana usually plays their best when they're in Washington Grizzly Stadium. That's why a high seed for this Montana squad is very, very important. They can still get a high seed. They're still right there in contention for getting a high seed, but they really, really, really need to have a good outing against UC Davis. UC Davis, one of the better offensive teams in the Big Sky Conference. I saw some numbers just before recording this video on social media that UC Davis doesn't play as well on the road as they do at home, which is probably could be said about any team. But that bodes well for the Montana team because they are the home team under the lights. They have the best home field advantage in FCS football. I don't think it's close. There's nobody else that really can affect teams. You ask anybody who's come to Washington Grizzly, the Furman team, they will tell you that they had a rough time with false starts. You ask North Dakota State, they had a rough time with false starts. It's very loud. It's very rowdy. The fans are right on top of you. It's an amazing environment, and it's tough for opponents to come in there. So Montana will be looking to get a win over UC Davis to bring their record to 8-2 and to drop UC Davis to 8-2 as well. We will see how that ends up, but it's going to be a good game. UC Davis has a tough finish to the season. UC Davis has Montana this week. They got Montana State next week, and then they finish the season with Sacramento State, which will probably be pretty easy for them. But the season is coming down to these last 3 weeks. It's going to be an amazing finish to the season. You guys let me know what you thought about this Montana-Cal Poly game. They get the victory 42-7. They looked good offensively. I think really the turnovers were the thing that sparked them, but Montana looked good offensively. They looked good defensively. They've looked really good defensively these last 3 weeks, obviously against lesser opponents. I think NAU could potentially be a playoff team, so that's a pretty good game for them to win that 31-20. But now we're looking at UC Davis. But offensively, I think they really got to settle on this quarterback situation. They really been playing both. They played both of them last week against Northern Colorado. They played both of them this week. They really switched them out a lot in this Cal Poly game. I don't know what the rhyme or reason for that. My only guess why they would do that, knowing Coach Houck, is that he doesn't want UC Davis to know who's going to play. If I had to guess who was going to play against UC Davis, I would honestly say Logan Fife. I don't know who's going to play, but just based off what we've seen this season, based off the production that we've seen this season, I would guess that it'd been Logan Fife. Logan Fife, I think they both don't have a ton of interceptions. Personally, I think Ayat runs the ball better. He had a 4-touchdown game against Western Carolina that really propelled Montana to get that win. They put up 46 points in that game with Ayat starting most of that game, playing quarterback most of that game, but we will see. I think, they're trying to play head games with these guys, and they can because they were playing against Cal Poly in Northern Colorado, so they don't really have to settle on one. But I think for this next game against UC Davis, you really need to settle on a quarterback. I think it's going to create a lot of problems for you if you don't settle on a quarterback. I don't know. I'm not a coach. I'm not the coach of this team, so obviously take whatever I say with a grain of salt. But it's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be interesting to see who they decide to go with. It's going to be interesting to see what outcome we get. That is my thoughts about that Montana versus Cal Poly game, and looking forward to that Montana UC Davis game. It'll be interesting. You guys let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and I will move on. Okay. Montana versus Eastern Washington. Now, I am of the belief that this Montana State squad... Did I say Montana? I am so sorry. I just got finished talking about Montana. Montana State versus Eastern Washington. Now, I am of the belief that this Montana State squad has not been tested since they played New Mexico the first week of the season. Now, they came out with the victory that game. I think their defense really played good that game. They only gave up... What was the final score? 35-31. The defense really only gave up 17 points in that game. They had 2 defensive touchdowns that were caused by sack fumbles, if I remember correctly, in that game. So that game really shouldn't have been close had they not given up those points. The defense really played good. But I am of the belief that this defense hasn't truly been tested this year outside of maybe that New Mexico game. They've really ran the table with a lot of the teams they played. Let's see some of the defensive points that they've given up. And mind you, a lot of the points that their defense has given up to this point in the season was because of backups. So they give up 31 against New Mexico. They really give up 17 in that game. They gave up 7 against Utah Tech. They gave up 24 to Maine. A lot of backups got in late in that game. They were really running the table in that game. They gave up 13 to Mercyhurst, which is probably the backups who gave up most of those points as well. Idaho State, they gave up 17. They gave up 17 to Northern Colorado. They gave up 17 to Idaho. And they just gave up 14 to Portland State last week. 2 weeks ago. And then they just gave up 28 to Eastern Washington. Now, this 28 against Eastern Washington, that was the first time that probably every point that was scored on their ones. Eastern Washington eventually had the game tied up at one point to 28, and then the defense stood up, made some stops. Tommy Mellott had a 76-yard touchdown run, and also he threw a touchdown pass to Ty McCullough. That was really the difference in the game. The turnovers, to start the game for Eastern Washington with the turnover really, really hurt them. I don't know if that was after Montana State had scored. Yeah, because Montana State started with the ball. They go down and score. They give the ball back to Eastern Washington, and Eastern Washington throws the interception. Fumbles. What am I talking about? Eastern Washington fumbled it on the ensuing kickoff. That was really a tough play for Eastern Washington. They immediately go down in this game 14-0. It's so hard to bounce back when you start a game out 14-0. The biggest indicator of wins and losses is turnovers, and to start the game off with a turnover for Eastern Washington, that is not good. Now, Eastern Washington, we know they got the best receiver in Big Sky football, one of the best receivers in FCS football, in Efton Chisholm. They got a really good offense, and it's not even that their pieces on offense are super good. They got a really good offensive play caller, and they know how to move the ball up and down the field. They showed that against Montana State, and I think it's something that Montana State hasn't really seen. Eastern Washington rushed the ball for 225 yards. They only threw it for 168. Michael Wortham had a long 75-yard touchdown run to put, I think it was to give them 14. It might have been their first points. It might have been I can't remember exactly what score it was, but Michael Wortham had a long touchdown run. I think it was to make it 21-14 at that point in the game. But a really good run, but he only had 2 carries. But then Tuna Altair had 72 rushing yards, and then Jared Taylor had 61 rushing yards. I don't know what is the most rushing yards Montana State has given up this year, but it might have been from Eastern Washington. If I had to guess, this was probably the highest rushing output. I don't know if this was truly the highest rushing yards that they've given up all this season, but if I had to guess, I would probably say that this is the most rushing yards that they've given up this season. But it was an amazing game from Eastern Washington and Montana State. Tommy Mellott showed up, as he does. He had 2 passing touchdowns. He was 13 for 20 for 181 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, his first interception of the year. He threw it on a tough play. You can go watch the breakdown. I kind of broke it down. I might post that clip online. It looked like they were in a man coverage. It looked like the linebacker just ended up being in the right space at the right time. Tommy Mellott was anticipating the spot route being open, and the linebacker just showed up and intercepted the ball. Eastern Washington wasn't able to do anything with that anyway, so it didn't end up hurting Montana State, but that was not great to see from Tommy Mellott. And then he had 1 rushing touchdown. He had 6 carries, 125 yards, and a touchdown, that long 76 yard touchdown run was really the difference. Scottrey Humphrey continues his stellar play, 21 carries, 110 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's now up to 146 carries, 1,068 rushing yards, and 12 touchdowns. He is having an amazing season. He's having a really good season. As a sophomore, I remember seeing him last year as a freshman, and I thought he could be really, really good, and he's shown that. If you go watch that North Dakota State game, I mentioned some of the juice he had. I mentioned some of the pop he had. When you watch him on film, he looks like an explosive player, and he's shown that this year. He's been a really good running back in the Big Sky Conference. He gets a ton of carries, obviously, so he's going to ball out. He's averaging 7 yards a carry. It's not hard to do behind that Montana State offensive line. They got a really good offensive line. They invest in it a ton, and they show up. Really exciting game to watch. If you watched it, probably not an exciting game for Montana State fans to watch, but it was a really exciting game for somebody who's an objective viewer looking at it as the Big Sky as a whole. Eastern Washington has played a ton of people close. They are 2-7. Their 2 wins coming earlier in the season. They won against Monmouth, and then they won another game against, I always blank on this. They lost to Sela. They lost to Drake. They beat somebody. Let me just go look at it. They won their game against Sacramento State, so that was their second win of the season. Outside of that, they've struggled this year, but they've played everybody close. 42-27, they won that against Monmouth. 35-32 against Drake, who is looking to win the Pioneer League again this year. They're looking really good. I think St. Thomas lost yesterday, so that really puts Drake in front. They just got to win out, and they're going to win that Pioneer League. So not a terrible loss from Eastern Washington from that standpoint. Sela, they lost 28-24. They lost to Nevada 49-16. They lost to Montana 52-49. They beat Sacramento State by a touchdown 35-28. They lost to UC Davis 48-38. And they lost to Idaho 38-28 last week, and then they just lost to Montana State 42-28. So they've put up more than 20 points on every team they played outside of Nevada. They put up 16 in that game, but they've been able to put points up. They just need to stop somebody. And I don't know when that'll happen. I don't know how long Coach Best will be there. Not wishing for that guy's job, but it hasn't been a good look for them the last couple of years. They haven't been a good outfit. They lost a bad one against Idaho State last year on a comeback victory. There was a touchdown by Efton Chisholm that I think should have been a touchdown. We're not going to rehash that out. They lost to Idaho State. It was a bad loss. They missed a game-winning field goal, all that stuff. But they lost yesterday to a 9-0, at that time 8-0 Montana State, coming off their second bye week of the season. They lost by 2 touchdowns. I don't know. I think this potentially shows some holes in the Montana State defense, something that we haven't seen all year. We haven't seen them against a good offense all year, and that was my last question mark I had about this Montana State team. What do they look like when they play against a good offense? They played against a good offense, and they were able to put some points up. Now, that still begs the question, can anybody stop this Montana State offense? I don't know. But if you get a team that can stop the Montana State offense and can also put up points on their defense, you got a recipe for victory for the opponent who's playing against Montana State. Now, we don't know if there's a team out there. I think if there was any team, it's NDSU, SDSU, maybe South Dakota. I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, they still got the rivalry game. UC Davis, I don't think UC Davis is great defensively. I think they're good offensively. I don't know about UC Davis's defense. They give us some points when they play against good competition. But obviously, they're undefeated against the FCS as well. So we will see. We got a ton of football still to be played. Not a ton, but regular season football, Big Sky Conference play is winding down. There's 3 weeks to go in the regular season, and things are shaping up. You guys in the comments, let me know what you thought about this Montana State game. Did you think it showed some weaknesses for this Montana State team, or do you think they just played a bad game? I personally think it showed some weaknesses for this Montana State team. I think it shows some holes in what they do defensively. I think they can be had defensively, but we will see. Can anybody else take advantage of that? We will see. They're undefeated for a reason. They won everybody that was in front of them. They beat everybody that was in front of them, and they won yesterday. So you guys let me know in the comments, and I will move on. Okay. What I want to know now, and what I want to ask you guys, my listening and watching audience, is if the Cats and NDSU both went out. And actually, this is a question that I saw on Twitter under somebody's post, and I decided to ask it on my channel, ask it to my followers and listeners. If the Cats and NDSU both went out, do the Cats or do NDSU get the number 1 seed? So if the Cats end up being 12-0, if NDSU ends up being 11-1, who do you give the 1 seed to? Who do you give the 1 seed to? NDSU beat the then number 1 team in South Dakota State. If Montana State runs the table and finishes the season undefeated, I don't know if they will beat a team that has been as highly ranked. Unless UC Davis gets bumped up, they've been around 5 or 6. I think they were 6, if I'm not mistaken, 5 or 6 this past weekend. If they beat UC Davis, if UC Davis beats Montana and then Montana State beats UC Davis and UC Davis is ranked 4 or 5 or 6, that is going to be a good ranked win for Montana State. They beat Idaho when they were number 8, but NDSU played Colorado very closely. They've played like 5 or 6 ranked teams. We're going to go look at NDSU's schedule right now. They've played a bunch of ranked teams, and they've looked really good while doing it. And that's one of the reasons why NDSU is ranked so highly. I think last week after they beat, or 2 weeks ago while they beat South Dakota State, at that point it was like 5 ranked wins for them, I think. And that is a lot of ranked victories, man. I don't even know if some teams play 5 or 6 ranked teams, but when the season ends, NDSU will have played like 6 or 7 ranked teams at the time that they played them. So let's look at NDSU's schedule. They're 9-1 right now, 6-0 in conference play. They started the season at Colorado. They lost 31-26, a very close game. They then beat Tennessee State. They then beat East Tennessee State, who was ranked at the time. They beat Towson. They beat Illinois State 42-10, who was ranked at the time. They beat North Dakota 41-17, who was ranked at the time. So that's 3 ranked wins so far. They beat Southern Illinois, who I don't think was ranked. They might have been ranked at the time. They beat South Dakota State, who was ranked at the time. So I think that was their 5. So South Dakota State, Illinois, North Dakota, Illinois State, and ETSU. So 5 ranked wins at that point. Then ranked wins at that point. That is a monster of a resume. And then so they'll finish the season with Missouri State, who could rightfully so be ranked. It looks like North Dakota State has a bye week this week, so they're not playing this week. But they finished the season with North Dakota State, or with Missouri State, and then they also have South Dakota. So those could be 2 really other good victories for North Dakota State. I mean, this is a major resume for this North Dakota State team. Obviously, it's partly in because the Missouri Valley is so strong, and they are heavily ranked in that conference. So if you win out, if you run the table in that conference, you're going to have a lot of ranked victories. You're going to have to get ranked victories to win in that conference. And that's what North Dakota State has been doing. They've looked really good defensively. They've looked really good offensively. They've been playing really good football. Against Murray State, Cam Miller was out of the game by the middle of the second quarter. It was just an amazing game for them. But, looking at this Montana State schedule, Montana State, if they win out, they will have a few ranked victories. I know we just went over it, but, I mean, they might have 3 or 4 ranked victories on this Montana State squad if they're able to win out, which I don't think is as good as a resume. So I would say that if they both win out, if Montana State, even though they'll be 12-0, North Dakota State, their one loss coming against a Colorado squad, who I think was ranked at the time as well, they might not have been ranked. They had a really bad season. I don't think they were ranked in the preseason ranks. Either way, a lot of people watching that team. Colorado is really good now. They're looking really good. Montana State doesn't have a very strong strength of schedule. And that was the knock against Montana State at the beginning of the season. Their strength of schedule is not strong. They're not playing a lot of strong teams. And you look at it now, Idaho was a good team that they played. They beat up on them, so showing that they're good. They beat an FBS opponent in New Mexico. Say what you want about that New Mexico squad. Winning against an FBS team is hard, no matter when you do it. And then they beat Idaho. It's really Idaho and New Mexico that you can look at. Their schedule is going to get tougher to finish the season. They got UC Davis and Montana, but outside of their strength of schedule just doesn't line up with NDSU. So I would personally say if they both run the table, even though North Dakota State will be 11-1, Montana State will be 12-0 if they win out. I think you still got to give it to North Dakota State. I don't think you can rightfully give Montana State the number 1 seed when their strength of schedule is not close to North Dakota State's. And that's no knock against Montana State. They've played a good season up to this point. Obviously, this is speculation, but I think they still give it to North Dakota State. You guys let me know what you think about that. Do you think a 12-0 deserves the number 1 seed? Or, I mean, if you get the number 2 seed, you're still getting home field advantage. I don't think anybody would be mad about the number 2 seed, but I think it's a good question to ask. Who gets the number 1 seed if they're 11-1 and 12-0? You guys let me know in the comments what you think about that, and I will move on.
In the Treasure State, University of Montana football is a way of life. Lithia Ford has long been a proud sponsor of Grizz football, and Lithia Ford of Missoula is thrilled to have several of the best Montana football seniors driving the best trucks in Montana. Aspen Sound is the premier car audio and accessory shop in Montana. Aspen Sound makes sure the boys are riding in style with tinted windows and state-of-the-art stereo systems. There's always a party in Montana. Whether you're going to a concert, a wedding, or a football game, the Montana Party Bus will get you there. Skyline Sports and ESPN MT cover the Big Sky with more depth than anyone. Check out SkylineSportsMT.com and tune in to Nuanez Now on 1029 ESPN Missoula every day. My Montana Roots and Wear Your Roots clothing is your go-to spot for the most unique and comfortable lifestyle clothing you'll find anywhere. And get your custom t-shirts to support your favorite player. From 5 local businesses who love Montana, best of luck to the Grizz as they pursue another Big Sky Conference championship.
Okay, I have another burning question that I want to ask. Who gets the better seed if Montana State and Montana share the Big Sky title? Now, this is something that I don't think we've seen in some time in the Big Sky Conference. But there's a scenario shaping up in the Big Sky to where Montana and Montana State could essentially share the Big Sky title. So imagine this. Montana beats UC Davis. That gives them their first Big Sky loss. Now they're tied, and Montana State is ahead in the standings for the Big Sky. Montana State beats UC Davis. Now, that means Montana State is going to play at UC Davis. So that could potentially be a game that Montana State could lose. We'll see about that. We don't have to get into that right now. Montana State beats UC Davis. Then that means UC Davis is really out of the running for the Big Sky title. You got Montana State and Montana. Either Montana State is going to win and win it outright, or Montana is going to win and get a share of it. Imagine if Montana beats Montana State and they're both 7-1 to finish the conference season. That means they're tied and they get a share of the Big Sky title. Now, first off, we were talking about this on the postgame show with Ace Sourwine and Denny Bedard yesterday on the radio. And imagine this. I don't know how many times it is shaped up like this or if it's ever shaped up like this, but imagine Montana beats Montana State. Montana is celebrating in the locker room, like, yeah, they give them obviously they have the trophy there. So they give Montana the trophy. Do the Big Sky Commissioner, Tom Wisterstill, and everybody in the Big Sky Conference, do they come to Bozeman with 2 Big Sky Conference championship trophies? Is that how it has to work? Because technically, if Montana beats Montana State and they both beat UC Davis, they'll both get a share of the Big Sky title. Does that mean you come with 2 trophies? And does that mean when you're in the lot, like, say Montana, this is just all hypothetical, obviously. Say Montana beats Montana State in Bozeman. Montana State loses the Big Sky, wins a share of the Big Sky title, but they just lost. Does that mean that they're sad in the locker room? Obviously, they're still going to be 11-1 at that point. Tom Wisterstill walks into the Bozeman locker room and gives them, the Bobcat locker room, and gives them a Big Sky trophy. Like, hey, I know you lost, but like, here's your trophy. You won the Big Sky Conference still. I mean, could you imagine? Do you accept that as a coach? I mean, obviously you're going to accept it. You still won the Big Sky title. It's a rivalry game. It sucks to lose the rivalry game, but you are still Big Sky Conference champions at the end of the day. Like, how do you accept that as the losing team? I don't know. This is an interesting scenario that's shaping up, but you imagine, I just have to say this. Imagine you lose the last game of your season, but you are still conference champion. What do people feel about that? Like, how do you feel about that as a fan? As a Montana State fan, what would you feel about that? Your team loses the last game of the season, but they're still Big Sky champions. Do you accept that, or is it kind of a damper on it because you might have just lost the rivalry game? Obviously, I'm mentioning again, this is all hypothetical, but this could actually happen this year. You play in Bozeman for Cat Grizz for the Big Sky title. Montana beats UC Davis. Montana State also beats UC Davis. You're both 7, or Montana would be 7-1 at that point. Montana would be 6-1 at that point, and Montana State would be 7-0 at that point. Montana wins that game. You get the Big Sky trophy. You're Big Sky champs, but you just lost Cat Grizz. That is going to hurt. Now, once again, I'll say for the last time, this is all hypothetical, but this is a scenario that could happen. What is people's thoughts about that if that were to happen? I think it would be crazy. I think it would be interesting. Obviously, Montana fans couldn't see it happening any other way. But even as a Montana fan, how would you feel about that? Like, you got to share the title with your rival. You won, you're Big Sky champions, and you won the rivalry. So that's really what matters is, like, for Montana fans, it's like, we won the rivalry, and we won the Big Sky, but we won the rivalry in Bozeman. There's nothing sweeter for a Montana fan than to win the rivalry in Bozeman for the title, which is what happened last year. At home, though, it's sweet at home, but on the road is crazy for them. For fans in general, it's crazy to win it on the road. That'd be an amazing feeling. I never did that. I never won in Bozeman, so salty, poor me. Sucks. But would that not be crazy? Montana wins the Big Sky title. You guys got to share it due to the rivalry game, but you're both Big Sky. I don't know. You guys let me know what you guys think about that. I think that's crazy. I think it's a scenario that interests me for sure. You guys let me know what you guys think about that, and I will move on. Okay, I have another question to ask. This is gonna be my last question that I'm gonna talk about that FCS top 10 reveal. For the first top 10 reveal last week for all of you. I know everybody already saw it, but I didn't get to react to it because I dropped my videos I record them on Sunday, drop them on Tuesday, so it's a weird timing with, I miss a lot of stuff during the week. Maybe I need to start dropping another video. You guys let me know if I need to start dropping another video. But, should the Pac-12 still want Sacramento State? Well, first off, does the Pac-12 even want Sacramento State? But I know they've been raising a ton of money to potentially get a bid to the Pac-12. It was so funny, Portland State, they posted and deleted a post talking about, let me go, because I took a screenshot of it because I could see it still on the timeline. They said, how's the Pac-12 application going? Because they beat up on Sacramento State. Sacramento State has been having a rough season. But should the Pac-12 still want them? At this point, does grabbing Sac State for the Pac-12, does that look good for the Pac-12? Does that add to the Pac-12? They got a ton of money. The Sacramento State's raised a ton of money. They're upgrading their facilities. They're upgrading their stadium. They're going to be an appealing site to play at. But, like, competitively, on the field, is that a good addition for the Big Sky for the Pac-12? I don't know. Should the Pac-12 still want Sacramento State, though? That's the question that you got to ask. Sacramento State currently, we're going to look at their schedule. We're going to look at their record. Sacramento State, I think, is 3-8. It'll tell me right here. I think they're 3-8 on the season. They beat Texas A&M Commerce. They beat, I don't know. We'll see. They've not been having a good season, though. Sacramento State is 3-6. 3-6 currently. Not good. And this is the Sacramento State team that was ranked preseason. They got a playoff win last year against North Dakota. They lost to South Dakota on the road. But they were a good team last year. Caden Bennett, I don't know what happened to him. He must be hurt for the season because we haven't seen Caden Bennett. Not that Carson Conklin has been playing bad. But I don't know what their problem is. They're really bad defensively. Sacramento State is. They can't stop anybody. And it reminds me of the Sacramento of old. I remember a game. A lot of people, Sacramento State's been good the last few years. But I remember in 2016 when Chad Chalik, I can't remember Chad's last name, but Chad, he was a quarterback for the Grizz when I was a freshman. And Keenan Curran, one of my dogs, Keenan Curran, he had like four touchdowns against Sacramento State. NY Grizz. And it also reminds me of 2018 when Dalton Snead went for like 250 rushing yards against Sacramento State. Then all of a sudden 2019 they got good, 2021 they got good, 2022 they were good, and then 2023 they were still pretty good, but now they're just falling back. I remember my senior year with Montana, they got their first victory against Montana in Washington Grizzly for the first time ever. 28-7 they beat us. Might have been 28-21 I think. We were right there. Tough game. That was a game that really kept us out of that, Big Sky title hunt. But man, tough game that day. But should the Pac-12 still want Sacramento State? They're 3-6 right now. They're 1-4 in conference. Are you trying to add a team? Financially, they look good. They look good financially. Monetarily, they've raised the money. It looks like an appealing addition to the Pac-12 conference. But competitively, they're about to play Montana State. I predict they'll lose that game. They'll be 3-7. They play Cal Poly. I don't know. That's going to be a close game. Say they win that, they're 4-7. Then they play UC Davis. They lose that. They finish their season 4-8. What does that look like for the Pac-12 to add a bottom-tier Big Sky team to a growing conference that wants to be competitive, that wants to be considered a Power 5? And that's another question is like, with the Pac-12, the way they've shifted, are they still considered a power conference? Or are they now seen as a group of 6 or group of 7, whatever you want to call it? Are they seen as one of those lower tier FBS conferences? I don't know. But I know they're going to want to try and compete with some of the top teams in the country. And that is why they're trying to rebuild the Pac-12 up and not throw it away with just Oregon State and Washington State left in it currently. I don't know what the answer to this question is. I think it's definitely something that should be considered. Sacramento State has not looked great this year. No fault of, anybody in particular. It's just been a tough year for them. But I don't know. Are they looking at things like this? Are they simply just looking at it from a money standpoint, from the Pac-12 standpoint, and looking at like, oh, they got the money, they can be in our conference? Or are they also looking at the product on the field and saying they got the money, but I don't know if we want that type of product attached to our name? I don't know what those type of discussions are. I've never been in those type of rooms, but I'm sure it's probably a discussion that's being had. You guys let me know what you guys think about that. If you were the Pac-12, would you add Sacramento State up to this point, or would you still wait and say, you got to show us a little more? You guys let me know down. And I'll also mention, there's a reason why they only grabbed so many teams from the Mountain West. There's a reason why. They grabbed the better more appealing teams in the Mountain West because it looks good for the Pac-12. They're not just going to grab anybody. So Sacramento State is trying to appeal to the Pac-12, but it's like you want them, but they don't want you, which is tough. You guys let me know what you guys think about that in the comments, and I will move on. Okay, we are reacting to the FCS Top 10 reveal that dropped last week. Another reason why I wanted to react to this is because I don't think there's going to be much movement in it from the first week to this week. All the teams that are on this won their games. There might be movement up and down, but I don't think there should be too much serious movement. Let me look at the incarnate word. But so far, first, you got North Dakota State at 1. They are for sure going to still be at number 1. Let me pull up the Southland Conference. Number 2, you got Montana State. They are for sure still going to be at number 2. At number 3, you got South Dakota State. They are for sure still going to be at number 3. At number 4, you got South Dakota. I don't know why they should have moved or would move. I think they were actually on a bye this week, South Dakota. At number 5, you got UC Davis. They shouldn't move at all. At number 6, you got SEMO. They shouldn't move at all. At number 7, you got Idaho. They were on a bye. They definitely shouldn't move unless you want to. I mean, Mercer played a tight game, so I don't know why you would move Mercer ahead of Idaho. But Idaho should stay at 7. At 8, you got Mercer. They played a close game. There was a lot of controversy with that game. The East Tennessee State coach posted the video of the onside kick that they recovered that honestly was called offsides. That honestly probably shouldn't have been called offsides. He posted the clip. He posted the picture. He was very upset. I did not watch that game. I need to go back and watch that game. If you haven't watched that game, go back and watch that game. I'm sure it was very controversial. Mercer, East Tennessee State. I don't know where East Tennessee State stands in that. The SoCon conference. I don't know where they stand in the standings of that SoCon conference. But obviously, it was important to that coach. That game was important. Mercer's a good team. Getting a ranked win against a Mercer team that probably has playoff standings as well. They lost a North Dakota State team to a North Dakota State team they shouldn't have lost to. East Tennessee State has had a rough season. It's been a rough season for them. We don't have to get into that. But Mercer at 8. You got Incarnate Word at 9. And Montana squeaking into that top 10 reveal at number 10. I don't think there should be much movement. Everybody this week handled business. I think it should probably be the same unless they wanted to move somebody above Montana, squeeze Montana out of there. But Montana 7-2, they have some good games. They've played some good games. They've beat some good teams. They beat a good Missouri State team that looks really good now. They lost to North Dakota and lost to Weber State. If you really look back at some of the games that Montana's played, they really should be undefeated right now. They shouldn't have lost to North Dakota. They should have won that game. They shouldn't have lost to Weber State. They definitely should have lost that game at home. They should really be undefeated right now. They've been able to beat. They were in position to beat every team they've played, and their schedules should definitely look different. But they're 7-2. You got to win the games when the clock hits 0, and they didn't. But yeah, that's the top 10. North Dakota State, Montana State, South Dakota, UC Davis, Southeast Missouri State, Idaho, Mercer, Incarnate Word, and Montana. What do you guys think about the first reveal? Obviously, I think Tuesday is when they're going to be dropping the top 10s. So if they're doing another one this week, they will have dropped it later on this day when this video drops. So what do you guys think about the first top 10 reveal? Do you guys think it's fair? I know I saw Rhode Island potentially get mentioned in there. But also, if you look at the Rhode Island schedule, Rhode Island has not really played anybody. And I'm going to go to Rhode Island right now and check out their schedule, see who they've played, see who they have coming up. And I don't think they play the top teams in the CAA. The CAA has 16 teams, so it's really hard for a lot of those teams to play all of those teams. So sometimes you can have those teams that slip through the cracks and win without. It's the same with Sacramento State. Sacramento State, for some of those years, were winning the conference. And they didn't always play all the tough teams. That's why I think there needs to be conference championships in FCS football. Move the season up a week. Do whatever you got to do. There should be conference championships. They should have to prove that you truly are the conference champion, just like you do in FBS football. That is what I think. I'm not moving off that. You got Richmond, who's 5-0 in the CAA. They're 7-2. Rhode Island is 5-0. They're 8-1. I believe they're undefeated against the FCS. Their one loss coming against Minnesota. They lost 48-0, but they beat Holy Cross. That Holy Cross game. Do not sleep on that Holy Cross game. That Holy Cross win for Rhode Island is a good win. Holy Cross is, no, it's not. What am I talking about? That's not the team I was thinking of. I can't remember who I was thinking of. But Holy Cross, I thought was, okay, that is the Holy Cross. So Holy Cross is undefeated, which is, man, so they're 4-5, but they're undefeated in the Patriot League. So they're 3-0 in Patriot League. Bucknell's 2-1. Lehigh's 2-1. I really think the Patriot League is having a down year because Holy Cross is 4-5, Bucknell's 4-5, Lehigh has the best record in their conference. They're 5-3, 2-1 in conference. Lafayette, who I picked to win the conference, is 1-3 in conference play and 4-5. We're gonna get into talking about the rest of the FCS, but I think Rhode Island maybe potentially has a case to get in that top 5. Into that top 10, but I think the top 10 is pretty good. I think it's pretty consistent. There's nobody who I would really throw in there. I think it looks good. I think that's who should be in there right now. You guys let me know in the comments what you think about that, and I will move on. Okay, my Big Sky poll after week 10. There's been 10 weeks, 11 weeks if you count week 0 in the FCS season, and I got a Big Sky poll, man. I got a Big Sky poll. There's not any movement in the top 5, not any movement in the top 6. No, there was not any movement in the top 6. Not any movement in the top 6. We got some movement towards the bottom, though. So at number 1, I got Montana State. At number 2, I got UC Davis. At number 3, I got Montana. At number 4, I got Idaho. At number 5, I got Northern Arizona. At number 6, I got Weber State. At number 7, I got Eastern Washington. At number 8, I got Idaho State. At number 9, I got Portland State. At number 10, I got Sacramento State. So I moved Eastern Washington above Idaho State. I moved Portland State above Sacramento State. They just beat up Sacramento State. At number 10, I got Sacramento State. At number 11, I got Cal Poly. I moved Cal Poly above Northern Colorado, and Northern Colorado's at 12. There's really some fluidity with Cal Poly and Northern Colorado. They're both at the bottom. They're not playing good football right now. They don't look really good. That's no indictment against them. They just haven't looked good this year. It's been a tough year for them. Been a tough year for Cal Poly and Northern Colorado. That's my top 10. Top 6 is Montana State, UC Davis, Montana, Idaho, Northern Colorado, or Northern Arizona. And at number 6, I got Weber State. Sorry, just got a phone call. I got Weber State. So it's been a good year for some of those top teams. Montana State, UC Davis, it's been a good year for them. But that's my top 6. You guys let me know what you think about that. And I will move.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Okay, we had some good performances in the Big Sky this week. I got my top Big Sky performances of week 10, and I'm going to go down it. At number 1, we got Dante Chachere of Portland State. He was 14 for 27, 240 yards, 45 yards, and a touchdown. Putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. 14 of 27, 245 yards, and a touchdown through the air. And then he had 14 carries, 165 yards, and 4 touchdowns on the ground. 5 total touchdowns. He averaged 11.8 yards a carry. If you remember earlier in the season, I can't remember, it was against Sacramento State. No, they just played Sacramento State. Earlier in the year, I think it was Idaho State, where he had 6 touchdowns, 3 in the air, 3 on the ground. He had like 200 passing and 200 rushing. An amazing game. I predict that Dante Chachere is probably going to be Big Sky Player of the Week offensively. There's nobody else that you could really throw above him, but he had a really good game. 165 plus 245, that's like 300 and something. 165 plus 245, 400 something. 410 total yards of offense, 5 touchdowns. He is definitely going to be Offensive Player of the Week. I know he was on some people's watch list for some All-Star Game watch list. I think it was either the Shrine Bowl or the NFLPA. We will see how he does with that. I mean, I know he's been balling himself. His team isn't very good. They had a tough schedule. We'll see. At number 2, I got Tommy Mellott of Montana State. 13 for 20, 181 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He carried the ball 6 times, 125 yards, and a touchdown. He averaged 20 yards a carry. He had a really good game. He was really the difference maker in that game against Eastern Washington. He threw a touchdown pass. He rushed for a 76-yard touchdown pass that really put it out of reach. But outside of him, that game might have come down a little closer, and that is why they really need Tommy Mellott, because he's a difference maker for that Montana State squad. And number 3, I got Lan Larison of UC Davis, 14 carries, 143 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. I think it'll either be him or Tommy Mellott for Offensive Player of the Year in the Big Sky Conference. I forgot about Tommy Mellott. Coulter Nuana has brought that up the other day when I asked, is Lan Larison going to go back-to-back? I honestly would pick Lan Larison. I mean, I know Tommy Mellott affects the game in the air, but Lan Larison is the leading receiver for UC Davis. He's the leading rusher for UC Davis. He throws the ball sometimes for UC Davis. He's a really good player. Miles Hastings could also win it. He's been throwing the ball all over the place. And that brings me to my number 4 player on my list. Miles Hastings of UC Davis, 20 of 26, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had an immaculate game. He played really, really well, played really good football. He's looking really good. I'm going to be very excited to see him and Lan Larison in person in Montana on Saturday. It's going to be a really good game. At number 5, you got Ty Pennington, who's balling for NAU. Potentially looking to make them a playoff team this year. They could finish the season off 8-4 and be in those playoffs. I think they should be a playoff team. They've played good football. They've showed that they deserve to be in the playoff, to get a look for the playoffs. Ty Pennington was 18 for 21, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is against Weber State. He had 12 carries, 73 yards, and 2 touchdowns for 4 total touchdowns. About 300 total yards of offense. He had a really, really good game. Just under 300 yards of total offense. 285 yards of total offense. A really good game for Ty Pennington. And number 6, got some defensive players on here. I went through the defensive statistics. This is who I came up with. Mason Rivera of Cal Poly in a losing effort against Montana. But listen to this stat line. 10 total tackles, 9 solo, 3 tackles for loss, 1 forced fumble that ended up being a touchdown, so it's a forced fumble, but I don't think they recovered it. 1 forced fumble and 1 interception. He ate up the stat line. No sacks, but not 3 tackles for loss, 9 solo tackles on 10 total tackles. A forced fumble and an interception. He was all over the place. That 1 interception came on the first drive of the game for Montana, but he played a great game. He made a difference, and it was amazing to see. Really good job from that guy. And number 7, 3 UC Davis players and my top players. They obviously played Northern Colorado, so they're going to tear up the stat sheet. But David Meyer, 12 total tackles, 11 of them solo, 2 tackles for loss, and an interception. Not as crazy of a stat line as Mason Rivera of Cal Poly, but still a great stat line. Completely wreaking havoc against Northern Colorado, and it was a really good game. You guys let me know what you think about my top Big Sky performances of Week 10. Let me know if you think I missed somebody, and I will move on. Okay. FCS update. We are going to be looking around the rest of the FCS. I want to take a look at what things are happening in FCS football. It's been an amazing year in FCS football. And I want to take a look at who is who and who is not. And also, because we got the playoffs coming around, this is the time that I feel it's right to look around the rest of the FCS and see how the conferences are shaping up, how teams are playing, how things are going, and we're going to take a look at it. So in the Big Sky Conference, you got Montana State at 5-0, and you got UC Davis at 5-0. You got Montana Grizzlies at 4-1. Those are really the teams in the running for the Big Sky title. I mentioned earlier, if you watched my earlier segment, that I think Montana and Montana State could end up being tied for the Big Sky title, which would be amazing. That would be crazy. I would love to see that. That would be crazy, though. And then you got the Big South OVC. Southeast Missouri is 5-0. You got UT Martin at 4-1. 8-1 overall for SEMO. SEMO is ranked 6th in that FCS top 10 reveal, looking like they would get the 6th seed if the season were to end last week. We'll see what it is this week, but 6-3 UT Martin could potentially win that. Let's see who SEMO finishes the season with. So far left, they have to play Lindenwood. I think they already beat UT Martin. Yeah, they beat UT Martin 45-42 in overtime. So it looks like SEMO is going to end up running the table and winning that conference unless they lose and bump their head to Tennessee State to finish the season. They got Western Illinois, or they got Lindenwood next week. They got Western Illinois in 2 weeks, and then they got Tennessee State to finish the season on the 23rd of November. SEMO's looking like they're going to get that auto bid from the Big South OVC Conference. They're looking like the team to beat in that conference. Next, you got the CAA, which is a huge conference. You got a bunch of teams with good records. 7-2, 7-1, 7-2, 7-2, 8-1. Rhode Island being that 8-1 team. Only loss coming from an FBS opponent. They've won all their games in front of them. Rhode Island is going to finish the season against Delaware, who's 7-1. Man, that's going to be a really good game. Rhode Island versus Delaware. I know Delaware is not able to win the CAA. Well, they could still win the CAA, I think, but they're transitioning, so they're not a playoff team. But they're 7-1 currently. Delaware is against 8-1 Rhode Island. That's a really good game. That could upset things for Rhode Island because that's the one knock against Rhode Island. They haven't played anybody. They haven't been tested. They've been able to really beat up on people. And then even in that, they haven't really been beating up on people. They beat Monmouth 37-28. They had to come back to beat them. They beat Maine 24-14, which is not how you think they should win that. They beat New Hampshire 26-9. They beat Brown 31-21. They beat Hampton 46-44 in double overtime. They beat Long Island 28-21. They beat Campbell 21-9. Campbell's a pretty good team, I think. They looked pretty good against Western Carolina, but they might not be anything now. They lost to Minnesota 48-0, and then they beat Holy Cross 20-17. So Holy Cross is 4-5 overall, but they are 3-0 in the Patriot League. So interesting from that standpoint. They're number one in the Patriot League, but they're 4-5 overall record. That doesn't look good for the Patriot League. Either way, that is the knock against Rhode Island. They don't play Richmond. They don't play Villanova. They don't play Stony Brook. They don't play William and Mary. They might have played William and Mary. Well, I just named them off. They didn't play William and Mary. They don't play any of the top teams. And then after they play Delaware, they're going to finish the season with Albany and Bryant. So Albany's 3-6 and Bryant is 2-7. So from that standpoint, I get what people are saying. Rhode Island has not been tested, and they're not going to be tested. So they've had a patty cake schedule. They've taken advantage of a patty cake schedule. You look at Campbell now; they're 3-6 overall, 1-4 in the conference. So from that standpoint, Maine is 2-3, 4-5 in the conference. I mean, Monmouth is 4-5, 2-3 in the conference. Hampton is 2-3, 5-4 in the conference. So all the teams that they've beat and played close, New Hampshire is 5-4, 3-2 in the conference. They haven't played anybody. They've only played one team and they beat two teams with above a 500 record. Everybody else they beat has below a 500 record. So excuse me for even mentioning Rhode Island in the potential top 10 pick. If the committee's looking at the same thing I'm looking at, there's no way Rhode Island could be a top 10 team right now, just based off their schedule. You got to look at the strength of schedule. And if I looked at their strength of schedule right now, it's probably towards the bottom of the FCS. Probably towards the middle of the pack in the FCS, towards the bottom of the FCS. They haven't really played anybody. They've taken advantage of an easy schedule. This week they get tested against Delaware. We will see. But I think we won't really see a huge test for them outside of this week until they get into the playoffs. And I suspect they'll probably be an early exit. Not to shit on Rhode Island, not to say anything bad about you guys, but you haven't been tested and you've played some tight games against some teams that are lackluster. When you get tested, it's going to shock the system. It's going to shock you guys. You lost to Minnesota 48-0. I mean, come on. If you're competitive, you got to be a little competitive. Either way, that's the CAA. FCS Independence, Merrimack, Sacred Heart. We're not going to talk about them. They are not going to make the playoffs. We got Ivy League, who I saw recently. Sam Herder posted this week. Should the Ivy Leagues play in the playoffs, the FCS playoffs? Yes, they should. Let them play more games. Let them start their seasons earlier. Let's see them play some FCS playoff football. I would love to see it. I definitely want to see Harvard, Dartmouth, Princeton play in the playoffs. Obviously, the two tops you got right now are Harvard at 6-1. You got Dartmouth at 6-1. They're 3-1 in conference. We will see how their seasons are going to end. I think Harvard, they all play each other, I believe. So Harvard is going to play. Oh, they just played Dartmouth and Harvard won. But could they still share the Ivy League title if they're both finished the season? What do they play? I think they play 1, 2, not Holy Cross, 1. I don't know, man. 1. Let me see how many conference games. I don't know, man. I think they all play each other, though. They finished the season with Columbia, who's 5-2. You got Penn, who's 3-4, and they got Yale, who's 4-3. So we will see. I believe Yale won that conference last year in the Ivy League, but there's pretty good parity in the Ivy League. They all are under the same rules, so they usually get comparable players. They're usually comparable teams, and usually, it's pretty competitive in the Ivy League. They play some pretty good defense, but also their statistics look good defensively because they don't play a ton of games. They only play 10 games, so their seasons start later than everybody. But Harvard, Dartmouth, they're not in the playoffs right now, so we don't really have to go down that too much. You got the MEAC. MEAC can play in the playoffs. You got South Carolina State Bulldogs. They're 6-2. You got North Carolina Central Eagles, who are 6-3. I'm not going to talk about them right now because I don't know if they'll make the playoffs. And if they do, they're usually not super competitive. Not anything against the HBCU. I wish you were more competitive. But also, people talk about a lot of times the Celebration Bowl is a better deal for those HBCU conferences anyway. In the Missouri Valley, you got North Dakota State, who's 6-0, 9-1 in conference play. You got Missouri State, who's 5-0, 9-1 in overall, 6-0 in conference play. You got Missouri State, who's 5-0, 7-2 overall. And then South Dakota State, who's 4-1, 7-2 overall. South Dakota, who's 4-1, 6-2 overall. There could really be a three-way tie in that Missouri Valley. I mentioned that last week. You could have North Dakota State, you could have South Dakota State, and you could have South Dakota, who all win a share of the Missouri Valley title. That would be honestly crazy, but that's what happens when you don't play a conference championship game. But even then, if you had 3 teams who were deadlock tie to finish the season, who do you choose to get that bid to play? I guess then, head-to-heads would matter. And I still don't know who you would choose at that point. But that's what it is in the Missouri Valley. Missouri State, too bad they're not playoff eligible. They would definitely be looking to get a playoff spot this year. Too bad there. I think they can still win the Missouri Valley. They're going to play North Dakota in a couple of weeks. North Dakota State in a couple of weeks. We will see how they do. They play South Dakota State as well to finish their season. We will see how they do. I would love for Missouri State to shake things up. They've looked good. They can throw the ball all over the place. They got a really good running back, Jacardia Wright. Jay Wright, he's a good player. Their quarterback, Clark, is a good player. They came into Montana and Missoula at Washington Grizzly and almost upset the Grizz to start the season, but they did not. That ends up looking like a good win for Montana. But Missouri State's a good outfit. 7-2, 5-0 in conference play in a tough Missouri Valley. The Northeast Conference, you got Duquesne at 4-0 in conference, 6-2 overall. Robert Morris at 4-0 in conference, 6-3 overall. In Central Connecticut, Blue Devils at 3-1, 4-5 overall. So really, Duquesne or Robert Morris looking to get that auto bid. They will play each other this week. Robert Morris, Duquesne, that's probably for the NEC title and probably for the playoff spot. So this is a really, really big game in FCS football. Really, really big game for those two schools. I would choose Duquesne to come out with that victory, but obviously we don't know. Anything could happen. Robert Morris just beat Merrimack 6-0. And Robert Morris has played some really, really good defense this year. Since they've been playing conference ball, Delaware State didn't score any points. Long Island Delaware State didn't score any points. Robert Morris, okay, never mind. They haven't been playing great defense. They played some decent defense, but St. Francis put up 0, but they beat Merrimack, who's not very good, 6-0. I don't think very highly of the NEC. So anytime they get into the playoffs anyway, I think they're a doormat. I think they're an easy victory. No offense to anybody in that NEC conference, but it's not competitive football, and nobody really struggles against them. So we are going to move on. But Robert Morris, Duquesne, they play this week. Tap into that game if you want. Could be a pretty interesting game. The Patriot League. I talked briefly about them earlier. 4-5. Holy Cross is leading in that Patriot League conference. And then you got Bucknell, who's 4-5. They're 2-1 in the conference. And Lehigh, who's 5-3 in that conference. Let's see how Lehigh is shaping up if they could potentially win that. They play Holy Cross this week. Good game at 10 a.m. on ESPN Plus, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. That is going to be a really good game for Holy Cross and Lehigh. Lehigh needs to win that game if they want to have a chance to win the conference. If they win that game and then they win out, they can win a share of that Patriot League title. Holy Cross finishes the season. I don't know if they've already played Bucknell. They are going to play Bucknell after they play Lehigh. So Holy Cross is having a tough end of their Patriot League season. They play Lehigh. That's going to be a really good game this week. They play Bucknell. That's going to be a really good game depending on who wins that game the week previously. And then they finish the season with Georgetown, who's 5-4. But I believe Georgetown's 2-2 in the Patriot League conference play right now. Yeah, they're 2-2. So Holy Cross looks to be head and shoulders right now. It looks to be leading in that conference right now. But Bucknell has a chance to upset things, and Lehigh definitely has a chance to keep their name in the running for that title. So imagine this. There could be a 3-way tie in the Patriot League as well. Bucknell, Lehigh beats Holy Cross. Now they have one loss. Holy Cross, Bucknell beats Holy Cross. No. There couldn't be a 3-way tie. Because Lehigh, no. There couldn't be a 3-way tie. Forget what I just said. Forget what I said. Either way, Patriot League shaping up well. The records aren't very great in that conference, but in conference play is all that matters. I think they only play. That's a league that only plays like 6 conference games. So we will see what we get from them. But you guys let me know what you think about the Patriot League. They're so. Lafayette was a good team. They should have beat Delaware last year out of the CAA. Delaware came back on some turnovers from Delaware came back. Delaware had 4 turnovers in the first half. There's no way Lafayette should have lost that game. There's no way Lafayette should have lost that game. Either way, I'm going to move on. I broke that game down. If you want to go watch it back from last year, please do. Pioneer Football League. Drake is 5-0 and looking to win it again. St. Thomas, the Minnesota Tommies. They lost yesterday, man. They played Morehead State, who's decent. None of these teams play strong football outside of the Pioneer League, which is so hard for me to judge. Because but Drake, they beat Eastern Washington. Props to them. But they played a double OT. No, was it double OT or OT? Where's that game at? Oh, I'm in St. Thomas. Let me go to Drake. I think they played OT. I don't think it was double OT. I think it was OT. Yeah, it was OT. But they played an OT thriller against a 2-7 Eastern Washington team that's near the bottom tier of the Big Sky Conference. That is not a good look for you, Drake, outside of conference. They had a game that was canceled to start the season. They lost to South Dakota 42-3. They beat Eastern Washington 35-2. Looks bad on the Big Sky, but looks bad on the Pioneer League champion. They're about to win back-to-back Pioneer League championships. That they were in a dogfight with Eastern Washington. They also were in a dogfight with San Diego. They should have lost that San Diego game. Go watch that San Diego game. Tell me they shouldn't have lost that game. I will go to my grave saying that San Diego should have beat them. They weren't able to capitalize. San Diego's 5-3, 3-2 in conference. Drake is 6-1 overall though, so they've only lost one game this season. That one loss coming from I just had it pulled up. I don't know why I went out of it. That one loss coming from South Dakota, but also they've played one less game. So Drake's looking good. They can finish the season. I think everybody plays 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They were only going to play 11 anyway, so they can finish 9-1, finish the season 9-1, undefeated in conference play. They play St. Thomas next week. St. Thomas can make everything even again if you beat Drake this week. You can make everything even again. You bump your head against Morehead State, but also if you beat them, Morehead State now will get a share of the title if they win out. Drake would get a share of the title, and St. Thomas yourself would get a share of the title. I mentioned that I thought St. Thomas could potentially win the conference this year. I know, that I mentioned that at the beginning of the season that they had made things like they were close. They were close. They were right there. They just moved up not too long ago. They're close. But Drake will finish the season against St. Thomas. They'll play Morehead State, which should be a pretty good game, and they play Stetson. So Drake does not have an easy end to the schedule. They play St. Thomas, Morehead State, and Stetson. That should be a win with Stetson, who's 2-6 right now. But Morehead State and St. Thomas, those are going to be some good games. Really, really good games. So that is the update on the Pioneer League conference. I don't think much of the Pioneer League anyway, but we will see. We will see when playoffs get started what they're able to do. We'll see who comes out with the victory. That is a league that I guess is only really going to get one auto bid. There's not going to be multiple teams making the playoffs in that conference. So that is my 2 cents about that. My iPad is not pulling up the standings yet, so I'm gonna go back. Okay, here we go. It's loading. Okay, here we go. Moving on, after we look at the Pioneer League, we got the SoCon. Mercer at 5-1, 8-1 overall, 5-1 in conference. Western Carolina 4-1, 5-4 overall. I would guess that the SoCon this year is only going to have one playoff team. Let's see Western Carolina. They're 5-4 overall. They have 3 more games. They could finish 8-4. I think Western Carolina could potentially get in the playoffs, or maybe East Tennessee State could potentially get in the playoffs. East Tennessee State is 5-4, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So they could potentially get no Chattanooga. Well, yeah, East Tennessee's 5-4, and that is why that loss to Mercer was so big, because Mercer already had one loss. If East Tennessee State were to win that game yesterday, they only had one loss at that point in conference play too, so they would have been 3-1 and 4-1, and with a chance to win the conference title. I get why that East Tennessee State coach was so mad, but I think the SoCon could get 2 playoff teams. They could potentially have Western Carolina and Mercer, or Chattanooga and Mercer, or East Tennessee State and Mercer, but I think Mercer is kind of like a lock for the playoffs right now. Let's see how Mercer is going to finish the season. They finished the season with VMI, who's 1-8. Then they have Alabama. I don't know why they always play Alabama so late in the season. It's always like they throw Alabama in there, they will lose that game, and then they will have Furman to finish the season. But they are undefeated against the FCS, if I'm not mistaken. No, because they lost a conference game. So they were undefeated, and then they lost. They bumped their head against Samford, and Samford is towards the bottom of that SoCon, in the middle. They're 2-3 in conference, but 3-5. Not a good record, not a good loss for Mercer, an ugly loss. And that is what's been this SoCon conference this year. Western Carolina was a really good team. They lost to a terrible Campbell squad. And then Mercer's undefeated, hasn't lost a game yet, and they lose to a terrible Samford team. Like, I don't get it. But yeah, Mercer, 5-1. I think they should make the playoffs. They finished the season. They have a favorable schedule to finish the season. We'll see how that goes. But that is the SoCon Conference. Furman was really the team in that conference, and they were a really, really good outfit last year. Great defense. This year, they are 2-6, so not great. But I think that SoCon Conference could get 2 playoff teams. Southland. Incarnate Word was at 9 in the first top 10 reveal. They are 4-0 in conference play. They only play, I believe, 6 conference games in that conference. 6. I don't think they play 8, because they're 4-0 right now, and they have 3 more games. So they play 7 conference games. Yeah, they play 7 conference games in the Southland Conference. They just beat Houston Christian 45-20. They have Lamar, who's 5-4. I don't know what Lamar's standings in the SoCon or the Southland Conference are. Lamar is 2-2 in Southland. Really, the team to beat in that conference is Sela, who they've already beat. So they have the head-to-head over Sela. But then Stephen F. Austin with Sam Vidlak playing great quarterback play in that conference. They're 6-3. They're 4-2 in conference. They're not going to win the Southland, but they're a good team. So Sela has to hope that Incarnate Word loses. I think the Southland is a 1 playoff team this year. They got Incarnate Word, who's 7-2. Those 2 losses coming against South Dakota State, and I think they had a FBS loss on their schedule as well. They lost to South Dakota State, and then they also lost to who did they lose to? They lost to Southern Illinois, 35-28. So Incarnate Word's a good team, but we will see how the season finishes off for them. They finished the season against Lamar, Stephen F. Austin. I think Stephen F. Austin could shake things up and make things interesting for them, but I don't know if that will get Stephen F. Austin into the playoffs. I think Incarnate Word's really the playoff team for them this year. There's obviously going to be an auto bid, so whoever wins that conference is going to get in. That could potentially be Sela. If they win, Incarnate Word could miss it. Well, that's the point where I think the Southland could get 2 playoff teams. Incarnate Word loses, Sela gets the auto bid. I think you still put Incarnate Word into the playoffs just based off how they've looked, and they've won some non-conference games. So I think they beat a good NAU squad. That's a really good win for them, 38-14. They beat up on them. They played South Dakota State kind of close. They lost a close win to Southern Illinois. But I think if Sela ends up winning the Southland and gets I think the Southland has an auto bid. They get the auto bid for that conference. I think Sela and Incarnate Word get into the playoffs from that conference. That's the only scenario. I think if Incarnate Word wins the conference and Sela is not looking good at that point in the season, I don't think Sela is going to get into the playoffs. Sela, I think if I just saw that right, I think it said Sela's 5-5 right now. So they must have a bye coming up. If not this week, but that's not a good record for a playoff team. You don't want to put a team that looks like that into the playoffs. They're 5-5, 4-1 in conference, and that's what we've been seeing from a lot of these conferences. Bad out of conference, really, really good in conference because they're able to compete with the teams that they play against each year. Last but not least, we are going to talk about the United Athletic Conference. This is a conference that I think could get 2 playoff teams this year. They've looked really good. They got some good football players and good football teams in this conference. You got Abilene Christian, who's leading in that conference now. Did Tarleton lose yesterday? I know they were on the edge yesterday, and I think they might have dropped a game yesterday. They did. They lost to Eastern Kentucky 17-13. That is not good for Tarleton. Tarleton has one of the better running backs in the country. One of the best running backs in the country. Two of the best running backs. The best 2 running backs playing in the United Athletic Conference this year. It's Kayvon Britton. And it's, gosh, why am I blanking on the guy's name? Kayvon Britton and Shunderick Powell. Shunderick Powell at Central Arkansas, Kayvon Britton at Tarleton. 2 really, really good backs. I don't know why this thing is going so slow right now, but I can't pull up any of the conference standings right now. But Tarleton lost. Abilene Christian leading in that conference. They lost a close one to Idaho. Abilene Christian did. They tried to come back, but the UAC is, a lot of people call it the WAC. That's a conference that I think has been really growing, and they're looking to make their case this year. I think they could potentially get 2 playoff teams. It depends on how the committee thinks about them, how the committee thinks about these teams' strength of schedules, but I think the UAC has looked like one of the better conferences in FCS football this year, and I have talked a ton of crap about the UAC in the past. I have really, really bashed that conference. I didn't think very highly of that conference ever. I have never really thought highly of them, but they have shocked me this year and looked really, really good. I think that's something that could get them potentially to have I don't know. We'll see. We will see, man. We will see. The reason I'm getting on my phone now is because my iPad just crapped out and the stats, the standings, and nothing's up anymore. And my iPad is like frozen now. So I can't get the conference standings up. And yeah, it is what it is. But the UAC, Abilene Christian, Tarleton, that must be the sign that I've been on this topic way too long. So I'm going to finish with the UAC, which is the last conference that we're talking about. Abilene Christian, Tarleton, the University of Central Arkansas, who lost another game, I believe, this weekend. But they're a good team. They they just can't get it together. But I think the UAC can get 2 playoff teams. They play some good football out there. I think it'll probably be Tarleton and Tarleton and Abilene Christian. But we will see. There was another team that was above them that I saw, and I can't. Okay, here we go. Let's pull it up. Let's see if we get it to pull up. It closed out, so it is what it is. But you guys let me know what you guys think about the rest of the FCS going on this year. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments, and I will move on. Okay, I want to preview Week 11 in the Big Sky Conference. I'm going to try to do it quick. I know we're at an hour and 15 minutes at this point in this video. But we got Eastern Washington, Northern Colorado. Eastern Washington is 2-7. Northern Colorado is 1-8. That is a 12 p.m. kickoff, so that is the first kickoff of the weekend. I think that might be the earliest kickoff of the season so far in the Big Sky Conference, outside of in conference play. 12 p.m. kickoff. That game is being played in Greeley. Go watch that game if you want. ESPN Plus this weekend on Saturday. You got Idaho State, Weber State. That could be a good game. 4-5 Idaho State versus a 3-6 Weber State. Weber State has looked up and down this year. Really up only against Montana and then down the rest of the season. They got a really good running back in Damon Bankston. Richie Munoz, I don't know. Jacob Sharp is a good player, but I don't know about this team, man. 4-5 overall against Idaho State, against 3-6 Weber State at 1 p.m. on ESPN Plus. That game is being played in Ogden, Utah. Go check that game out. Sacramento State, Montana State, being played in Bozeman. 9-0 Montana State versus a 3-6 Sacramento State at 1 p.m. on ESPN Plus. You guys can let me know what you think about that game, but I think Montana State is going to boat race them. The defense is going to get a good talking to this week, and Sacramento State has not been very good defensively. So that is a team that I think is going to be in for a rude awakening in Sacramento State. Montana State just played a close game against Eastern Washington, which has been the case for everybody who's played Eastern Washington. So that's not necessarily an indictment against Montana State, but I do think they showed some holes. That's going to be good film for teams who have Montana State on their schedule still to look out, like a Montana and like a UC Davis. But Montana State, Sacramento State, that should be a pretty decent game. Idaho, Portland State. Idaho's coming off a bye, as is Idaho State, but Idaho's coming off a bye. 6-3 Idaho versus a 2-6 Portland State. That game is going to be played in 2 p.m. in Portland, Oregon. I would pick Idaho to win this game, but Portland State, who knows? Portland State could play upsetter. Portland State could play, spoiler. That could be their role right now. But I think Idaho should win that game. They got Jack Lane back. They had another week of rest for him with the bye week. Even though he was back, get some rest. He's just coming off a collarbone, so he can't be 100% yet. He's probably still like 80 to 90, maybe even 75%, but he's able to play. So he's back. We'll see how they look coming off the bye week. I'm interested to see what that game is like, but that game is going to be played in Portland at 2 p.m. Northern Arizona, Cal Poly. Northern Arizona should win this game. 5-4 Northern Arizona versus 2-6 Cal Poly at 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus. That is going to be a pretty decent game to watch. I would probably be more interested in Idaho State, Weber State than Northern Arizona, Cal Poly. But Northern Arizona is looking like they're going to be a playoff team. Depending on how many teams the Big Sky gets in, I think they're going to get 3 for sure. I think 4 maybe, and I think 5 is potentially a stretch, but I think they could get 5 into the playoffs. We will see. But Northern Arizona, Cal Poly, that game is going to be played at 6 p.m. in San Luis Obispo. So Cal Poly gets back-to-back games at home. And then finally, the game of the week in FCS football, the game of the week in the Big Sky Conference, Cal Poly or UC Davis versus Montana. UC Davis is coming to Missoula to play Montana. 8-1 UC Davis will play 7-2 Montana at 8:15 Big Sky After Dark, baby, on ESPN2. That is going to be an amazing game. I know there's going to be a lot of eyes on that game. A lot of the committee is probably going to be watching that game. A lot of Montana fans obviously are going to be in attendance for that game. UC Davis people are going to be in attendance as well, as much as they can get. Tickets are probably already sold out for that game. I will be in the press box watching that game from a bird's eye view. It's going to be an amazing, amazing atmosphere in Washington Grizzly. I'm excited to see who comes out on top. That game has massive ramifications. That is the game of the week. If I tell you to watch any game that day, watch Montana versus UC Davis. I like the late kick because we get a lot of the day to do a lot of things, to watch a lot of football that day. But it's going to be a great, 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 great day. I appreciate you guys for tapping into this, and I will move on. Let me know what game you guys are interested in watching. I just kind of spazzed out right there, but let me know what game you guys are interested in watching this weekend. Obviously, a lot of eyes are going to be on Montana, UC Davis. You guys let me know, though, if you guys think another game is interesting. I know you probably don't, but let me know. Okay, that is going to conclude my video this week. Make sure you guys check the audio out. If you guys don't like watching the video on YouTube, you guys can always catch the audio on Skyline Sports. That is where the audio gets posted up every week on the Big Sky Breakdown podcast, on the Skyline Sports podcast. You guys can catch all of that. Make sure you guys, if you guys are Grizz fans in town, come watch Under the Helmet with me and the Grizz running backs each Sunday, interviewing the running backs, sitting down with those guys, eating at the press box. You guys can come hang out, come get some food, have a good time, watch some Sunday Night Football. It's always a good time with me and the Grizz running backs. Make sure you guys tap into the channel. I got some interviews dropping with some NFL players coming soon. So I appreciate you guys for tapping in. Make sure you guys watch the breakdowns. I did Montana State and Montana this week, so go watch those breakdowns. I appreciate you guys for continuing to tap into the channel. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys leave me a comment down below. Make sure you guys let me know what you guys want to see more of. I'm trying to cover a little bit more FCS now that we're getting close to playoff time, but I appreciate you. Let me know what you guys think about all of this, and I will move on. See you guys later. Have a good week. Have a good weekend. My brain is all over the place right now. This is my third video today, so sorry that I'm kind of spazzing out here at the end of this video, but I appreciate you guys so much. Catch you guys next week. See ya later.